It is a snowy morning in New England during the American Civil War, and inside the March household, the atmosphere is one of quiet struggle and spirited companionship. The war has taken the family's father away to serve as a chaplain, leaving the four sisters, Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy, to navigate their lives under the guidance of their mother, Marmee. They are not wealthy, and they feel the weight of their relative poverty, but their lives are full of the intense, often turbulent energy of sisterhood. As we meet them, we see the distinct personalities that will define their journeys. Meg is the eldest, beautiful, and conscious of social standing, often longing for the elegance she sees in the lives of the wealthy. Jo is the most striking presence, a headstrong, tomboyish girl with a fierce intellect and a passion for writing. She is the rebel of the family, more interested in stories and adventure than in the traditional expectations of a young woman in the mid-19th century. Then there is Beth, the shy, gentle soul of the house, whose life is centered around her piano and her quiet, observant nature. Finally, there is Amy, the youngest, who is perhaps the most preoccupied with refinement, art, and the social graces that her older sisters sometimes find tedious. The story isn't just about their childhood antics, it's about the slow, often painful process of growing up. As the sisters move through their teenage years, the little women of the title begin to face the realities of the adult world. For Meg, this transition is marked by her relationship with John Brooke, a tutor who works for their neighbour. Her journey is one of reconciling her youthful desire for finery with the practical, often grueling reality of domestic life. When she eventually marries John, she discovers that playing house is nothing like the romanticized version she once imagined. She finds herself managing a household, dealing with the exhaustion of motherhood, and learning that a marriage requires a partnership of equals rather than a fairy tale. Through Marmee's wisdom, Meg learns a vital lesson about identity, that being a good mother and wife doesn't mean losing herself, but rather finding a way to balance her duties with her own spirit. Jo's path is perhaps the most complex. She views writing as her vocation, a way to carve out a space for herself in a world that primarily expects women to be domestic anchors. She experiences the thrill of early success, winning $100 for a story, which she uses to provide a much-needed trip to the seaside for her family. However, Jo also faces the tension between her authentic voice and the commercial demands of the publishing world. She struggles with the temptation to write sensationalist, salacious stories that sell, versus the more serious, character-driven work she actually wants to create. Her journey is a struggle for agency, trying to be a professional writer while navigating the social constraints of her time. While Jo and Meg are navigating the external worlds of marriage and career, Beth and Amy are navigating their internal worlds. Amy, the youngest, travels to Europe to pursue her artistic interests. This is a period of significant growth for her. The girl who was once self-centered and obsessed with social climbing matures into a sophisticated, refined woman. Her time in Europe provides her with a broader perspective on life and art, and it is there that she finds a sense of social maturity that her younger self lacked. But the emotional heart of the book is found in the quiet, devastating shift in the family's dynamic as Beth's health begins to fail. Beth has always been the most fragile of the sisters, a girl whose sensitivity is both her greatest strength and her greatest vulnerability. When she falls ill, the house loses its quiet center. The most poignant moment in the narrative is Beth's confession to Jo. She knows she is dying, and she faces her end with a profound, spiritual resignation that stands in stark contrast to Jo's loud, rebellious grief. Beth's death leaves a permanent void in the March family, a silence that changes the rhythm of their lives forever. In the aftermath of Beth's death, the remaining sisters must learn how to carry on. They find that adulthood isn't a destination you reach, but an ongoing process of managing loss and finding new purposes. Jo, after facing the sting of critical reviews and the loneliness of her professional struggles, finds a new kind of resilience. She eventually finds love and settles into a life that, while different from her wildest youthful dreams, is deeply rooted in purpose. The story concludes not with a grand, dramatic climax, but with the quiet, steady work of living. The sisters are grown, their lives are settled into the rhythms of household management, the raising of children, and the maintenance of the bonds that hold them together. It is a conclusion that emphasizes the dignity of the everyday. When we look back at Little Women, it's easy to see why it became such an immediate sensation. Louisa May Alcott was doing something quite revolutionary for the time. She moved away from the purely sentimental or the purely moralistic, offering instead a realistic look at the lives of women. Through the four sisters, Alcott created an archetype, the all-American girl, that represented different facets of female identity. You have the domestic ideal in Meg, the intellectual rebel in Jo, the spiritual center in Beth, and the social climber turned artist in Amy. One of the most interesting things to analyze in the book is the duality of domesticity. There is a constant tension between the romanticized ideal of the home as a sanctuary and the messy, exhausting reality of actually running a household and raising children. Alcott doesn't shy away from the fact that domestic life can be grueling, nor does she suggest that a woman's choice to enter it is a surrender. Instead, she presents marriage, particularly in the case of Meg and John, as an egalitarian partnership, a concept that was quite progressive for the 8s and 60s. There is also the theme of artistic integrity versus commercialism, which we see through Jo. Her struggle reflects the real-world pressures faced by women trying to enter professional spheres. Can a woman write for herself, or must she write to satisfy the tastes of a public that wants something different? Jo's journey is a search for a way to be both a woman and an artist without compromising her soul. Even the symbolism in the book is quite deliberate. The use of nature, like the sea or the birds, often mirrors the temperaments of the sisters and the inevitable tide of life and death. The transition from childhood to womanhood is portrayed as something inevitable and sometimes overwhelming, what some critics call the inescapable woman problem. It's the realization that the freedom of childhood must eventually give way to the responsibilities of adulthood. Ultimately, Little Women is a book about the strength found in connection. It suggests that while the world will inevitably change, while people will grow up, move away, or pass away, the foundation of family and the shared history of sisterhood provide a resilience that can weather any storm. It's a story about the quiet, persistent work of becoming who you are meant to be, even when the path is not clearly marked.